In this video, we will cover some fundamental properties of water and how these properties are important for our life on multiple levels. This includes looking at the atomic structure of water, how this structure allows water to make certain kinds of bonds, and how these bonds give water special properties. Our lives, and indeed all life on Earth, wouldn't be possible without water. All life occurs in an aqueous environment in the presence of water. One way you can think of this is that the cells in our body are a little bit like a bowl of soup. They have different things or molecules in them, but they're all components that are dissolved in water. We are most used to dealing with water as a liquid, but remember that the same compound forms steam when boiled into a gas, or ice when frozen into a solid. However, we will focus on liquid water, as this is the most important phase to consider for human anatomy. Water is a fairly simple molecule. It consists of one oxygen atom, shown here in red, and two hydrogen atoms, shown in white. These atoms are sharing electrons in a covalent bond. Each hydrogen atom is bound to the oxygen atom, satisfying the hydrogen's demand for 2 electrons and the oxygen's demand for 8. This bonding causes water molecules to take a particular shape. This ball and stick model shows how water molecules have a V shape. Now, why do they take this shape instead of having the hydrogens bond at essentially random locations? It's basically a matter of spacing. The shape is produced because the hydrogens, and indeed all the electrons on the oxygen atom, are trying to keep an appropriate distance from one another. As you can see from the ball and stick model, the oxygen atom has 4 equally spaced slots in which the hydrogens can bond. A space-filling model also captures this arrangement, in addition to reflecting the larger size of the oxygen atom. In the covalent bonds between an oxygen atom and a hydrogen atom, the electrons are not shared equally. The oxygen atoms exert a greater pull on the electrons, and thus they gain a larger share of the electron's negative charge. Unequal sharing of electrons in a covalent bond makes a molecule polarized, while equal sharing, like that seen in bonds between a carbon and hydrogen atom, usually produces a nonpolar molecule. Thus, water has a particular structure and shape, with one side containing a partial negative charge and the other side containing the hydrogens and featuring a partial positive charge. The shape of water and these charges reflect its function and how it can interact with other molecules, including other water molecules. A single glass of water, of drinking water, will contain trillions upon trillions of these polar H2O molecules. The old saying, opposites attract, is true between 2 separate water molecules. The partially positive hydrogen from one water molecule can have a weak attraction to the partial negative charge of the oxygen on another water molecule. This type of bond is known as a hydrogen bond. It is weaker than a covalent bond. Notice that the atoms participating in a hydrogen bond are not sharing electrons with each other. They are simply attracted to each other's charge. In addition to forming hydrogen bonds between water molecules, water can form hydrogen bonds with many other polar molecules. If a molecule is polar, or at least has some part of it that is polar, it can participate in a hydrogen bond with water. Note here that the rest of this organic molecule is made of covalent bonds between carbon and hydrogen, shown here in gray and white. This part of the molecule is nonpolar, and thus it will not interact with water. The partial charges on water molecules can also team up to interact with ions that feature a full positive or full negative charge. The sodium and chloride ions in common table salt, which normally remain tightly associated with one another and form a solid, these ions can dissolve in water. The water molecules form hydration shells around the ions, neutralizing the positive or negative charge. These water molecules are generally still free to participate in hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonding gives water a number of important properties, which are responsible for everyday activities like cleaning up a spill with a paper towel, as well as many aspects of how our own bodies work. Hydrogen bonds help keep water molecules interacting or stuck to each other. This leads to the surface tension of water and is also the cause of capillary action. Surface tension is what allows some bugs to walk on water, and capillary action is important for a paper towel cleaning up a spill, as well as for the root system of a tree, in addition to many other examples. Let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Surface tension occurs because water molecules cannot hydrogen bond with the air. The water molecules at the surface, between water molecules below them and air above, must either bond with each other or with water molecules below them. This network of hydrogen bonding that occurs at the surface makes the very top of the water act as a sort of barrier, providing a small amount of resistance to forces that push down on the water surface. Capillary action results from the surface tension and cohesion of water molecules in combination with the adhesion of water to a polar surface. Here, water molecules stick together, but they are also drawn to the sides of the container. We can see capillary action when we use a paper towel. Paper towel is made from cellulose, which is a polar molecule, as you might have guessed from the diagram on this slide, which shows that it contains a number of oxygen and hydrogens. Water at the surface, when it contacts a paper towel, can form hydrogen bonds with this cellulose and move up the paper towel. The hydrogen bonding properties of water also give it a number of other characteristics. Hydrogen bonding is responsible for water's high specific heat, or why water can retain a lot of heat energy and also transfer heat energy easily. More rigid hydrogen bonding patterns are also what gives solid water, or ice, a lower density than liquid water. Last, but definitely not least, water molecules will orient or order themselves to maximize hydrogen bonding. In particular, they try and maximize random assortments of hydrogen bonding. In the presence of other polar molecules, this is not a challenge, but addition of nonpolar molecules to, let's say, a glass of water makes this more difficult for water molecules to achieve. Since nonpolar molecules do not interact or hydrogen bond with water, they are sometimes referred to as hydrophobic, which is from the Greek for water-fearing. These molecules do indeed act as if they are afraid of water. Nonpolar or hydrophobic molecules include those like oils, fats, and wax paper. These molecules contain a lot of equally shared covalent bonds, for example the bonds between carbon and hydrogen, and thus they are nonpolar and cannot form hydrogen bonds with water. So why does the positioning or orientation of water in the presence of these molecules matter? Why do these molecules make it a challenge for water to maximize the hydrogen bonds they can make? So to answer this question, recall the concept of entropy. Entropy, or disorder, is always increasing in the universe. In other words, disorder can occur spontaneously and is the more preferred or sort of the default condition for the universe. In contrast, order takes energy to create and maintain. For a simple everyday example, think of your bedroom. If you take no special actions, it will eventually become a mess. It takes time and energy to organize something and maintain this order. To see this in action with water and to understand the hydrophobic effect, let's look at water with or without a hydrophobic solute like oil. On the left is the water without the solute. The molecules in this solution are free to hydrogen bond with any of the other water molecules, so there doesn't have to be a special order, orientation, or position for each of them. They can randomly move about and enjoy a disordered, messy room. In contrast, some of the water molecules on the left must hold their position around the hydrophobic solutes, forming sort of a cage around them. These waters cannot hydrogen bond with the oil molecules, because the oil molecules are nonpolar, and thus they must lock into place into a particular hydrogen bonding arrangement, often with each other. So this is not a favorable condition from the entropy or disorder standpoint. To maybe illustrate this a little bit more dramatically, consider how the water molecules on the left can rearrange both where they are and which water molecules they are hydrogen bonding with. As you can see, on the left there are many more possibilities than on the right, where several of the water molecules are locked into place. So is there a way that we can accommodate the oil molecules in the solution on the right in order to maximize the hydrogen bonding potential of the water? So separation of the nonpolar or hydrophobic molecules, in this case the oil, from the rest of the water helps to maximize the amount and the random location of the hydrogen bonds. So this is the reason why water and oil don't mix. And in this case, the oil, which is less dense, will settle out on the top. Instead of several water molecules having to lock around each individual oil molecule, only one surface between these two sets of molecules or two substances is now needed. This hydrophobic effect is a very powerful one in biology. Although it is usually seen in a way that is a little bit more subtle than a beaker full of water and oil, the principles and the chemistry underlying the effect are the same. This effect is important for the structure of our cells and is important for how molecules inside the cell interact with each other. This general effect can be seen not only with water and oil, but any combination of a polar and a nonpolar molecule. Of course, the precise outcome to any mixing depends on what exact chemicals are being mixed. Remember that it is energetically favorable for water to maximize the amount of random hydrogen bonds it can make. Any additional order the water molecules must obtain requires an input of energy from the outside.